I have been away for the last month, traveling the world, I guess. I went to Canada, went to Germany, to Shucks and Essenspiel, big board game conventions, and I spent a lot of time having fun, playing games with friends and meeting new people, and now I'm back here in England. And it looks like this, and all my friends are away, and you know what? I am not the least bit sad, because here at NPI we work very, very hard to show you the best games, to find the most hidden gems, and I'm so happy to report that this time around we have uncovered an actual treasure. Okay, get ready, because this game is tray cool. It has horses, it has pirates, it even has a plastic ruler, because geometry is fun. Treasure Island is a game that asks you to do exactly what it says on the tin. One player, playing as Long John Silver, will secretly mark a location with the tiniest X on this map, and then it is your job to find it. To illustrate just how stupendous this task is, I have enlisted the help of Elaine to find a needle I have hidden in this pillow. While she's keeping herself busy, let's take a brief look at the roles. Treasure Island is played from two perspectives. One player who takes on the role of Long John Silver, and the rest of the motley crew who will blindly try to dig through every inch of this island, trying to find his treasure. Aside from your special abilities, on your turn you can do one of three things. One of those three things is moving up to 6 miles, or in this case 6 inches, but because publisher Matago knows that board gamers are essentially kindergartners at heart, the way you actually move in this game is by putting a measuring ruler and then drawing the distance with a coloring pen. And then once you actually get to where you want to go, another thing you can do is you can search for treasure, and you do that by placing this circular tool and drawing a circle in the middle of it and going, Long John, is the treasure there? It's not. You can also do a mini combination of both actions by moving only 3 miles and then searching with the small search tool. After each search, Long John will sheepishly hand you a cardboard treasure chest. It's most likely empty, but it could hold a little bonus or even the coveted treasure itself. And if you found it, great, you've won the game. Talking of which, let's see if Elaine has won her game. So, any luck with the needle? As Long John Silver, a man named after his underwear, you will still take turns, always before another player, but what you do isn't entirely up to you and is dictated by the game. For example, the game might force you to give out a clue to another player out of a selection of bad, worse, and oh, actually, this doesn't look that bad at all. I'm gonna... Oh, no. I think I've just ruined myself. For example, the game might give you a choice of naming 2 players. One of them is closest to the treasure, whereas the other one is relevant. But crucially, you don't have to tell anyone which one is which. And whilst that alone isn't enough to reveal anything, everything you say can and will be used against you in a geometric court of pirate law. Later, a player might ask you to give a compass clue, which is you taking yet another transparent and gorgeously understated measuring tool and then eliminate swathes of territory in 2 directions. Or a clue might ask you to draw an 8-mile circle centered around a miniature, and the treasure is somewhere within that 8-mile radius. And of course you get this thing to play around with because you're a child at heart, but what you're doing is you are drawing your own noose. Every nugget of information that you give out will be noted, corroborated, remembered, and used to hang you with a rope woven from the trail that you have yourself laid out. What's best is that some clues are public, whilst other clues are given out in secret, and in that way each opponent dominates your brain space with its own individual mind map of information. For example, at the start of the game you'll give each player one of these tokens. They will eliminate one of the 11 areas in the game, telling them that, hey, you know that the treasure is definitely not there and you don't have to go there and search for it, but the other players might still wander over and draw their circles. Or a player might ask you through the course of the game to give them a compass clue, which means you'll center this giant compass tool around the miniature and eliminate two areas telling them, hey, the treasure is definitely not there. So then each time you're forced to make a selection out of 3 clues to give them, you're not just making a selection out of 3 bad clues, you're making a selection out of 3 bad clues that are weighed up against what you think they know, or what you think that you know that they know. But the real beauty of it is that whilst it may seem like a vicious net of coloring pens about to ensnare you, piling layers and layers of stress, so much stress that you will wish you brought an extra pair of long johns, a clever pirate will use all of this to their advantage. While so much of the game that Long John is playing is based around figuring out who knows what, so much of the rest of the game that the other players are playing is also based around figuring out who knows what. Let's say that Long John just gave someone a compass clue and suddenly they're making a beeline all the way across the map. And did they actually figure out where the treasure is? Or is Long John just messing with them? Each time Long John is forced to give a clue, he's also forced to put a face down token underneath it. Most of these tokens simply state that this clue is true. However, 2 of these tokens say that this clue could be true, but it could also be a lie. So twice per game, you have the opportunity to confound, bamboozle, and lead your opponents on a wild sheep chase. Let's say I'm playing as Long John and I just gave a clue that the treasure is south of the blue miniature, which is definitely not a lie. Your first instinct is that I'm an idiot. I have but 2 lies and I wasted one of them by clearly giving out false information. Because if what I said is true, then the amount of territory left to search would be so minuscule that I'd lose the game before I could say yo ho ho and a bottle of Tizer. So you check what's underneath that token and find out that it is indeed a question mark, which means what I said could have been true, but it could have also been a lie. Which tells you absolutely nothing. As the game goes on, the noose gets tighter and tighter, not only because the clues eliminate large portions of the map, but also because each search another player performs tells you exactly where the treasure isn't. And in fact, for a game where no one is meant to be cooperating, you'll find yourself banding together with other treasure hunters, sharing tidbits of information, not too much, because if you tell them everything you know and they don't tell you everything they know, then you're at a steady disadvantage. But just enough to steer them in the right direction so that their searches just let you know a little bit more. Here's another thing that's nice about this game, the details. Things like an actual cardboard treasure chest or a hidden compartment in the box full of gold coins. Or consider this, if this game wasn't the genius that it is, how would Long John Silver actually win? Well, they'd probably have to confound the treasure hunters for a number of rounds, and if they haven't found it by the end of those rounds, then Long John would win. Except that would be anticlimactic and boring. After a few rounds, a few clues and tidbits, the game will ask us to place Long John Silver's figure on one of these towers on the map. Eventually, our treasure master will break out and make a beeline for the treasure. If they reach it before we actually manage to find the treasure ourselves, that's it. They've won the game. Immediately, we're pressed into a corner and asked to cooperate, because if we place Long John right next to where the treasure is accidentally, they'll win the game as soon as they break out. We want to buy ourselves a little bit of time, and that's what's going to force us to share just a little bit of that private knowledge that we have. And just like that, with a little bit of dressing up and the theatre magician's touch, this game becomes fabulous. And my word, is it brave. There's a long history of hidden movement board games, from the sleek and elegant Scotland Yard to the bloated and gargantuan Fury of Dracula. And the reason there's so many of them is because, well, it turns out that hide and seek is really fun. And it isn't just hide and seek, it's smart and clever because it's asking you to analyze clues and eliminate information, engage that detective part of our brain, a part that has a surprising amount of endorphins in it. But Treasure Island doesn't want to be just another hidden movement game. Instead, it wants to be a hidden movement game where the hidden movement doesn't move. Part of the joy/frustration of these games is that the hidden object is always on the run, always evading you. So to flip that on its head and say, there is no movement. With a hidden object, it's always so frustrating when you lose track of it. But here, you're always zeroed in, always getting closer. And then to take that and somehow make it continuously feel exciting and clever, that is a tall order. And the attempt on its own deserves copious amounts of ours. I'm sorry. I wanted to say, like, praise, but in a piratey way. And it just came out as arse. That's not the only thing that makes this design so fresh. Treasure Island feels wild and untamed, like a picture drawn by a 5-year-old. And it's easy to like it if you're the parent of the thing that made the drawing, but if you're anyone else, you will most likely go, that's very nice. And that's actually the best bit, because whilst on the surface it seems wild and untamed, actually underneath it there's a real cohesive structure. And it takes real skill to design something that appears to be all over the place, but is grounded underneath. You just don't see it. We don't want to make it sound like Treasure Island is a game for people who are into gaming, because sure, it does innovate on established ideas and it does subvert tropes, but at the same time, it's incredibly accessible. After all, it is just draw a line and then draw a circle. Is the treasure in there? Yes, no. If no, keep playing until it's in there. It's incredibly welcoming and everyone can enjoy it, and we would undoubtedly recommend it, but predictably, this is a time for just a few tiny caveats. Because the amount of joy it brings is parallel to how invested the players are into this idea. In fact, just having one person not buying to the concept of deducting the needle in a haystack can bring the atmosphere of the entire table down as they gripe and groan about drawing geometric shapes with coloring pens, a critique observed by friend of the channel John Perkis. Check his channel out. That's a minor complaint because we're talking about edge cases here, but let's take the accessibility critique a little bit further. If you're colorblind, good luck playing this game. Whilst the board is double-sided and does contain a more colorblind friendly version, you are still playing this game with red and green marker pens. And after some testing with a colorblind vision app, we found that if you have red color deficiency, there's no way you're telling these apart. Of course, this could potentially be solved by buying friendlier coloring pens, but we'll have to leave that experimenting to you. Let us know your results in the comments. But that's not where the accessibility story ends, because my word, and I do mean word, this rulebook. Get ready for some championship level franglais with phrases like, we will see later how to raise the doubt about that. Or, to do so, he materialized the treasure's location. Okay, we're poking a little bit too much fun, but this is just a mere sampling of the idiosyncratic translations that make this rulebook just too much of a chore to learn the game from. Player count is also peculiar in this game. With 3 to 5 players being the treasure hunter is great because not only are you working with the information that Long John gives you, but you're also bouncing off of other players. But if you're just playing a 2-player game, then Long John gives you all of the information and there's nothing to bounce off of. Whereas if you're playing as Long John, the 2-player game is great because you suddenly thrust into a Tom and Jerry game. And if you're a millennial and not familiar with that reference, then Hannibal Lecter and Clarice Starling. What do you mean you're also not familiar with those? Anyway, my point is that if you introduce more players into that equation and you're playing as Long John, suddenly your game becomes a little bit wishy-washy, making this game have no ideal player count. But unless this directly eliminates you from being able to play the game, and what a shame that would be, we found none of the other reasons to be strong enough or good enough for us to not actually recommend this fantastic and lovely game. The only strong criticism we could come up with is that we're not entirely sure about the longevity of the game. Yes, technically each time Long John draws an X, they draw it in a different place and they're giving out different clues, but the puzzle you're solving is still the same puzzle. But even if the magic wears off, there's still that rush of tension and excitement as the game draws to a crescendo. I swear to you, even the coldest of hearts will start beating like a war drum when you realize that the treasure is just 1 or 2 searches away, but Long John has gotten out of their tower. Will a lucky shot win it? Will you share information just to stop Long John from winning because they've been a naughty player? Treasure Island is one of the most riveting, exciting, and drop-dead gorgeous games we have played in in the last year. And you know what? I always love to find a good excuse to muck around with coloring pens again. So do yourself a favor and get this game. And to see us out, here's a little bit from Elaine.
I could try